All right, welcome to the Yukon Project live event. Today we're going to talk about the benefits and the downsides to buying used or new cars. We know that this is a huge purchase. This is one of the biggest purchases you'll make in your life, not accounting your house. It's probably the biggest purchase most of us do make in our lives. And we probably don't talk enough about the benefits and detractions that we need to think about when we're making a purchase. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about that. What are the pros and what are the cons of buying, say, a used car? Steve, tell us, first of all, before we even get there, have you guys bought both new and used cars?
I've only purchased new.
All right, because so Steve probably can tell us a lot about the new experience. Nathan, how about you? What have you done?
I bought one new car. I bought multiple new cars, but I've only bought one used car.
Okay.
And it wasn't the greatest experience.
This is good. So I have done both, and I've done quite a bit of both with my kids and whatnot, and where we stand. So I have a little bit of experience of buying used cars from dealers as well as from individuals, as well as buying new cars. So, but we've all done a little bit of research on this, so we can give some pretty good insights in terms of what we've found. But since we have the most experience here on the call on the new car side, let's talk about what the benefits of buying new are.
Actually, let's talk about what is called the new car trap. So the new car trap is something that is happening in society today where instead of looking about buying a car based on what they need or how it's going to be used, they're buying new cars based on the symbolism that the car provides, which can dramatically increase the amount you pay. Do you need leather? Do you actually need four-wheel drive in your truck? Which then puts you in a situation that costs you a lot more money. In my experience, I've never fallen trapped to that. Instead, I've looked at what I need out of a vehicle and I purchase that amount after I do a very extensive understanding of what my financial risk would be. And so for me, when I look at the trends of price, last month, a new car cost, please pause for this, $48,000 at an average APR of 7%. What is the average payment, you might say? Let's ask our math whiz. Nathan, can you run the numbers on that? What's the average payment on 48,000 at 7%?
Well, shame on you for dropping that on me. Now I've got to go grab my calculator and actually find out because I don't know off my.
Okay, while he's looking for that, tell us what the average used car price is.
35,000. But here's a couple of things. So I always buy new because I know within the car warranty, I'm always going to get things fixed. So usually call it 6 years, 60,000 miles, depending on the vehicle, you're going to get full coverage. Obviously, depending on the life of a used car, you're not going to get that. But here's what you need to think about when you buy a used car. And I know this for a fact because I do have a lot of friends that think I'm crazy for buying new. And so they tell me why you should buy used. So I'll tell you that. Then we'll get back to new. Here's why you buy used. One, you're going to spend less. Somebody else took the hit on the depreciation, not you. Two, you can haggle. If you find somebody that's selling a car individually, not from a dealership, you might actually be able to haggle a significant amount. If you are paying cash, obviously you're going to pay less cash out of your pocket for used versus new. Here's the downside. Generally speaking, you have a higher APR. Not just a little bit, but several points higher APR. So you're going to pay more on the monthly payment. The other thing that is a positive for new used versus new, your insurance costs will go down because the risk to the insurance company goes down because the car's not worth as much. So you're just going to pay less on a monthly basis. So back to new. So anything else on used that you guys want to touch on? It can be a better budget. I think the big thing for me when we think about cars is do not follow the shiny object. Don't get caught in that trap. Don't have a $75,000 car where you're paying $1,000 a month.
All right, so let's answer your other question. Then I'm going to get to this one. First question answer. Assuming you're going to use a 60-month loan, 5 years, that's the average, $950. That's the car note. That's a lot of money for a car. $950 every month for a $48,000 car at 7% interest.
So the average household in the United States makes how much, Mr. Jonathan?
About 60,000 these days. It's about 58,000, I believe.
What is the average monthly take home on $60,000 after taxes?
It's a good question.
About 4,000.
So we're basically saying today, 25% of a person's monthly income, more or less, is being dedicated to cars.
If you go by all those averages, then yes. I don't know that that's the right way to go about it. But if you make an average income and you buy an average car at an average interest rate, yeah, that would be a quarter of your income. And that's how much you're supposed to spend on your house, not on your car.
Yeah, that's a great way to go broke. But I doubt whether that person would be approved for a loan that high. But to your point, that's the trap, is that you try to get the biggest car you can for your budget. And that's the wrong way to look at it, because when you start looking at the biggest car you can get for your budget, what you're failing to recognize is everything from the mileage, the maintenance costs. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. Cars get into accidents, and the higher the cost of the car, the higher the bodywork cost is to just repair that car. And so one of the biggest things that you do is you think you're free and clear once you've figured out that you can work it into your budget. But the reality is, what you really want to do is come in way under your budget and not just live with that amount, but put that amount into a savings account that will be your maintenance and your next down payment, savings account for your next car. If you live well below your means, you can grow into better and better cars over time. If you live above your means, you will ultimately grow into worse cars over time and more financial stress.
Okay, so obviously I buy new. I think you can negotiate. For me, it's worked out really well. I buy and hold. I'm almost 50 and I've only owned 3 cars. So in my adult life. So I think that works out really good. I have a lot of friends who say, well, a car's not going to last me forever. So I only care about what the monthly payment is, because I'll always have one the rest of my life. And so they literally buy a car, whatever the monthly payment is, they're willing to accept, they do it. And then when they're tired of that car, they just trade it in and keep the monthly payment going. So they're just swapping cars. Is that a good decision financially?
Oh, that sounds like an absolutely horrible decision. I hate to quote Dave Ramsey, but in this case, he's absolutely right. You should not do that. I go the other way. I bought my last truck for myself, the car I drive. I bought that in 2009, brand new, paid it off. I haven't had a car note since 2014. 9 years, no car note. It's been fantastic. That's a good way for me to save money. Yeah, I could afford a car note, but I don't want to. I'm not going to.
So you're saying leasing is a horrible thing?
It's a
because
good
that's the monthly payment.
It's a good way to keep your monthly payment down most of the time. But then if you factor in how much you have to put down on it most of the time, the $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, it ends up actually, to me, I did a lot of research on that, thought about leasing a car. I was like, wow, this is really not a good idea for me.
No, and let's be honest, leasing is probably a good idea for small business owners that can write off the cost of that lease. What it allows them to do is to stay with the most current cars and whatnot if it's a business expense. But for most of the rest of us, leasing is just a really good way of putting money in the pockets of the dealer, and really just kind of locking yourself in. So I will say this, my experience, I've done both, right? I am currently driving a car that is very much paid off, been paid off for years. It was a brand new car when we bought it. I intentionally bought a car that we knew was going to be a very reliable car, and it's been great. Before we had even a fairly minor repair on the car, it was paid off. And that's fantastic. Flip side is we've bought cars that we bought used as well. And one of the best things that I did when I bought a used car for my teenagers to drive is we bought a cheap, smaller car. And because it was significantly cheaper, and because I knew that really my kids were only going to be driving this for a few years, I could feel comfortable buying a much cheaper, a little bit older car, and we could pay it off immediately. And that means that I didn't have a whole nother brand new car and a new car payment. And what was really cool about that as well is the car we got had bells and whistles and features that the previous owner really wanted on their car that we didn't essentially have to pay for because it was a cheaper, smaller car. And so we got a feature load on this car we would never have paid for in a brand new car.
Okay, so if you were going to give advice to a younger self and you were going to say, these are the 3 things that I want you to pay attention to when you start buying cars, what would they be?
You know, my first thing, and I know this probably goes against your life experience, Steve, but as a younger self, I'm not sure I'd buy a new car first. I think that cars are reliable enough today that there's no reason why you can't buy a 3, 4, at least a 3-year-old car and just be perfectly happy with it and save an enormous amount of money on the front end. And certainly when you're young, the most important thing you can be doing is to formulate your finances in such a way that they're sustainable and that it gives you a chance to build wealth over time. Because if you can do that now, early in your career, you will be able to generate a lot more wealth and a lot more financial stability in the long run. And frankly, I don't believe that. Let's put it this way: the car manufacturers are going to give you a 6-year warranty. Why? Because they really genuinely do not believe something is going to go wrong with your car in 6 years. If they did, they wouldn't be giving you that warranty because it would be out of their pocket, which means that if you buy a 3 to 4-year-old car, it's pretty certain that you're not likely to have problems. You might. I mean, it's a numbers game, but the reality is a 3-year-old car these days should be as stable in terms of your maintenance costs as a brand new car for at least a few years.
Okay, that's one. So buy used. Got it. What's the next one?
So I'm not going to necessarily say buy used. I'm going to say buy what you need, which goes right back to what you said earlier. Don't go out and buy a bunch of bells and whistles. Don't buy the 4x4 truck when all you need is a car to get you back and forth to work. Buy only what you need and don't spend too much money. Don't spend more money than you have to on it. Now, often that can be accomplished with the used car, but if you have to, it might be a good deal to buy a small, low-cost new car as well. So new versus used, I don't always think is the great question. I think it's does the car match your need?
You know, another way to put that is if you're looking for a status symbol, there are a lot cheaper things that you can buy that would give you a status symbol than a car, right? The danger of the car is that it is an extremely expensive status symbol, and it's a status symbol that you need to maintain. And the reality is luxury cars cost more to get new tires on them. They cost more to have maintenance done on them. And they often take a higher grade of gasoline, which means they cost more to run. So the reality is, you know, if you want a status symbol, maybe go out and buy yourself a fancy purse or buy yourself the pair of shoes that you want. I mean, if you're really into the status symbol, but the car itself, especially early in your career, becomes a drain on your finances.
Yeah, I think both of those points are really good. I think the one thing I would have told myself when I was younger, buy the car with the highest miles per gallon. So my first car had 11 miles per gallon. And I had to drive close to 30 miles each way. So the unexpected wear and tear cost and cost to drive, despite the fact that whatever the cost of fuel was back in the 1950s when I started driving was a lot lower. I think that would have been the one thing I would have given myself advice for. The other thing that I have thought of and I have seen put into action by people is there's actually a way to buy things, add value to them, and sell them for more than what you paid. And so I would say if you are young and you don't have a lot of disposable income and you're trying to build savings, find those opportunities. An example of that is a truck that has slight damage that somebody has to get rid of, that you can get fixed and turn it around and sell it for more. And then you can leverage that money to then scale your car lifestyle without costing you more. And so it might take a little bit more work. You might be able to do it. And I have applied that in my life in other ways with other things. And I think that could be an option as well. And I know there are kids who can do that and don't realize that they can do that, but it does work.
So let me give you a great example. My son went out and bought a motorcycle that had some damage because it had gotten laid down at one point. And he went online, bought new trim for this thing, new chrome, installed it himself, sold the motorcycle literally less than a month or two later for $2,000 or $3,000 more than he bought it.
Yes.
It is a great way, especially if you're willing to do a little bit of sweat equity and figure out how to change your own brake pads and whatnot. You can do a lot of that stuff on your own. The other thing I will say aligned with that is when you buy. A lot of people, even if you're going to buy a brand new car, do you really need the latest model, or do you want to buy the model that the dealers are trying to unload because next year's models are coming out soon? And is there a value to that? Because one of the things that you can do is you can go out of your way to buy things when other people aren't buying them. Another example is same son who, my son went out and bought the motorcycle just as winter was starting, because everybody was unloading their motorcycles because they knew they weren't going to ride it. They knew they were going to move or whatever. He held it for 3 months, sold it in the spring when everybody is looking around wanting a motorcycle for the summer, and again, made several $100s profit on that because he was willing to buy at a time when most people aren't buying.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So to wrap it up, Nathan, you want to take us out of here? What would your final advice be to people as they consider buying new versus used, and how should they think about it? Given that one sage advice?
The one sage advice is the same thing I always say. There's no one right answer. Sometimes the right answer is a used car. Sometimes the right answer is a new car. Put your information, what your situation is, in context, and use that to decide new or used for you at that time.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say my personal advice to people is do not get caught in the trap. Spend way less than you want. Don't chase the bells and whistles. You don't need it.
All right. And my final advice is, I don't know if you need a car right now, but plan for your car right now. Start putting money aside now and be consistent, because that is a cost that's going to come up in your life. And the sooner you start saving for it, the better your financial future will be.
And I get, because I can't be trumped by Jonathan, I'm going to come back with one last one. Is my final word of advice is be like Seth.
That's right.
Turn your purchase into cash, and so you make money on your purchases. And especially when it comes to vehicles, be like Seth.
Not a bad move. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Yukon Project live event on cars, buying used and buying new. We will be here again next week, and we'll see you then.